It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to talk about a really special project that I did. So I've talked about OpenSprinkler in the past, but this time I needed to set up OpenSprinkler. I'm selling my home, and I'm concerned that the new owners won't be quite so tech savvy and they wouldn't know how to connect to the OpenSprinkler system, which at the time was just a Raspberry Pi connected to the OpenSprinkler board mounted on my wall. There was no screen, no display, no way to control it other than connecting to it through my network and then controlling it with one of my computers or my phone, things like that, which is awesome because I can connect to it with my phone over Wi-Fi and walk out to the sprinkler zone and actually test things. It's amazing. It's a really simple, intuitive system. It is open source, and again, there's an OpenSprinkler Pi version that I use. So it uses the Raspberry Pi 3 with their board. I've got two of them, as a matter of fact, but I wanted to set this up so that the new owners would be able to use the system without having to connect it to their Wi-Fi, without having to understand all that stuff. So I went through a few things to get it set up, and I wanted to tell you about how I did that, show you some pictures of what I did, so we're going to get into that, and kind of let you see how this worked out. I think it's really cool, and I think somebody who wanted to take this a step further could really do something even better with it. But I'd say overall, with the Raspberry Pi 3 that I bought years ago, two of those for 35 bucks a piece, $70. About $70 for each of the boards, so $140, so you're talking $210 now. And then the actual screen that I bought was about 80 bucks. It's a touchscreen 10-inch display. Really cool, works with the Raspberry Pi. It's made to work with the Raspberry Pi. So it does everything that I need. So again, so you're talking, pretty close to $300 for the whole setup. But I mean, if you went and bought a sprinkler controller, some of those things run upwards of $700 US, maybe even close to $1,000 US, some even more than that, depending on what you get. And they're super complicated to use. So I wanted to show you how I did this and what I've done here. It's really cool. I really like it. And my wife helped me with it because she is much more the handyman kind of person in the family than I am. So it's a really great project, and we had a lot of fun. I wanted to share it with you guys. I think you're going to like it. And if you haven't checked out OpenSprinkler, it's a really cool, really fun project. If you've been thinking about putting a sprinkler system in your yard and you haven't done it yet because you weren't sure, this is a really great way to go. If you already have a sprinkler system and you hate the hardware controller that you have, this is another great option that you could look at. So just wanted to share it with you guys. I think it's really cool. We're going to get into everything right after this. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really, truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I really appreciate it. Thank you again. Let's get started. So one of the things that I was doing with this particular setup is I don't know how technical the new owners might be once someone buys my house, and I didn't want them to have to figure out how to get a Raspberry Pi onto their network, how to connect to it, how to get a screen set up on it. So I'm doing this to make this easier for the new owners, but also to make it easier for me to be able to leave them with some confidence that they'll be able to work their own sprinkler system. So I've done a few things. First is I set up one of the Raspberry Pis, the one that's connected to the back of the screen, as kind of the master Raspberry Pi, I guess you'd say. And that's actually the one on this tab here. It's only got two zones, and I've renamed those to make them easier to tell what they are. And then the same thing whenever you go to the second tab here. So when you go to that second tab, I've renamed all the zones so they can tell where they are. And then I'm also creating a map of my yard so that they know where each of these zones is at. Just something to make it easier for them to tell, like, what are they actually watering and where are they watering. The last thing is, because there's not a physical keyboard hooked up to this system, Raspberry Pi OS doesn't come with a keyboard installed, but they have several on-screen keyboard options that you can install, so I've done that as well. And if you look up here in this upper corner, you'll see that little second icon from the left is actually the keyboard. So if we tap that, then we can tap Show Keyboard, and that brings up a nice little keyboard here at the bottom of the screen, and you can actually type things in if you need to. So you can do things very easily with the actual screen itself. You can then hide the keyboard if you don't want to have it up there anymore. And this is a pretty nice on-screen keyboard, so I'll go through kind of the different things that you can do with it, the options that it has, and just kind of how I set it up. And then if you looked at that leftmost icon up there in the upper right corner, you'll see that I've also got VNC running, and I wanted to have a VNC server running so that I can actually connect to this from my computer. And if they're technical enough and they want to, they'll be able to do that as well. So the way this works is it's connected to my Wi-Fi right now. So you can see that up there in the upper right corner. And then back here behind the scenes, I'm going to get you a view of what's going on. So I've got the Raspberry Pi and the controller connected to the back of the screen. Then I've got this Ethernet cable down here that runs from this Raspberry Pi over to this Raspberry Pi over here, and it runs in. So these are connected physically, and I've set them up with some networking that allows them to talk to each other. And that's how this opens up with these tabs. So if I go here to the upper left corner, and actually I'll do this on the other screen just so you can see what's happening, and then I'll record this screen, but I'll kind of put them side by side so you can see what's happening there. Is you click on a sprinkler zone, and you'll click on the zone, and you'll see you get this little pop-up here. So this is a little bit in the way, so it's kind of hard. But if we close this, it's got some nice up and down. So if I wanted to run this for 3 or 5 minutes, it's pretty easy to hit the plus and just get 5 minutes out of it. And then you can submit, and that would start your sprinklers. And that's the same way for any zone that you've got. You know, if you wanted to run it for 30 seconds, though, you may not want to click that, you know, for 30 times. So click in the space, open up the on-screen keyboard real quick, type in 30, and when you close it, you've got 30 seconds there. And again, you can submit and start that sprinkler zone. So it will run, you know, pretty easily, and it makes it really easy to actually use the sprinklers that you're trying to set up. Same way if you wanted to do bubblers, you would do the same thing. So it's a really simple interface, which I like. Again, if you've ever used an on-the-wall sprinkler controller, a lot of times it has like 4 rocker switch buttons that you have to use to navigate and try to do things and set times and turn things on and tell them to stop. And the one that was here in this house was very complicated. I had no instructions. I tried to look it up on the internet, couldn't really find anything either. So we fumbled our way through it initially, and I just thought, okay, this is miserable, and I'm never gonna want to try to set this up. So I was really super excited when I found the OpenSprinkler Pi project. So that project creates the controllers and everything. So if you're looking for something already just completely built, and they have this interface already built into them, you just basically hook it up and start it, and it'll, you know, you can connect it to your network. But they do have the board that you can connect to the Raspberry Pi like I've got, and I'm just using a Pi 3B model for both of those boards, and it just connects into your pins. It's very, very easy to put together, and you get a little laser cut thing with it. But from the Raspberry Pi itself, when you restart this thing, and I'm going to just tell it to restart here, and I'll take a video of what it does and kind of talk about that through the video as we go. And you'll see here, it just shuts down pretty easily. It's going to start rebooting on its own, which is great. You'll see a normal Raspberry Pi boot up process here, and you can see my Punisher shirt there in the reflection. But if you can't see it, up here is the little blinking thing, and so it comes up with the Raspberry Pi pretty quick. I mean, this takes, you know, about 20 or 30 seconds to do a full reboot. It's not very long. And it'll be coming up. There's the mouse. And then here it is. And then if you just give it a few seconds, it boots right back into those 2 tabs. So they automatically open up whenever the system starts. So it gives it a few seconds to really get started. And then it opens up both of those systems, and you can see that it loads up very quickly. And I've just got it going kind of in like a application mode in the Chromium browser, so that they load up pretty easy and you've got access to them really quickly. And then it's back up and running. I mean, it's very simple, very straightforward for that process to happen. And it makes it really actually pretty nice for the end user. And again, you've got up in the upper left corner up here, the VNC viewer has started. And you can see there's even an update that's available, so they can run the updates. Most sprinkler systems, I'm guessing these days, don't get updates, which is you know, not great. But yeah, so this even gets updates for the OS and things like that, which is pretty nice. Now, if they want the keyboard, they do have to go here. I need to set up a thing to start the keyboard itself. So really clean, really simple. Hopefully it'll be very easy for them to use, and I'll leave a few written instructions, of course, so they can get started with it. But it should be pretty basic and simple for them to use. So we're connected back to our system here on VNC, just so you can have a little bit better audio and a little bit better view of what I'm doing. So the way that I got all of this stuff set up is, of course, using the terminal and using some simple web access pages. So each Raspberry Pi has its own web page set up. But what I had to do was on this particular Raspberry Pi, and I'll kind of go back and I'll make this a little bit larger. Okay, I'm going to quickly go through the things that I did to get these Raspberry Pis set up. Really not too much here, but some things worth knowing. And again, I'll have details in the show notes so that you can copy and paste commands. And I'll even have details of what I did inside of some of these files that I edited, so that it's easier for you to kind of see. So first, we're just gonna, once the Raspberry Pi is set up with Raspbian OS, we install git, curl, and wget. These are just kind of default tools that I like to install on things because I use them for everything, but in this case we're definitely going to use git. So the next thing we had to do is clone down the OpenSprinkler Pi project, the software and the firmware basically. And it used to be a little bit different URL, so it's updated even since I did this the last time several years ago. So this is the new one. Then we just go into that folder that gets created when we download this with git, so just cd into it. And then we just run the build. So once you're in there, you're just going to run this build, and as long as you've got everything set up, it's got everything you need pretty much. So you just do sudo /build.sh ospi. Let that finish, and you've basically got OpenSprinkler Pi running on your Raspberry Pi. You just need to make sure it's connected to a board and connected to your sprinkler system properly, and then it's ready to go. If you just have one Raspberry Pi and you don't need a touch screen to control it, you're just going to connect to it through your network, this is it. You're done. That's these 4 steps, and you're basically finished. Now, if you need to go a little further, like I did, there's a few other things to be done. So as we go down here, when you get to this step, we're going to enable VNC, and we just do that through raspi config. So you can do, just in the terminal, do sudo raspi-config. You can do that either through SSH, or if you're connected directly to the device, you can do it that way, and it opens up a incurses looking type little kind of UI in the shell itself, so it's pretty easy to go through. But we'll open that up and you'll be able to see it here in just a minute, and I'll kind of walk you through how to turn things on. The next thing was we needed to set up DNS on the main Pi. So in my case, I have 2 Pis that are going to be connected with a network cable, and the one that's going to be kind of the primary Pi needs to have DNS set up. So we just do a quick update to get all the new packages, and then we do an apt-get install DNS mask. M-A-S-Q is how you spell mask. DNS-M-A-S-Q is what we're installing. And then we do a sudo, oops, we didn't get a space there, nano, and then /etc/dnsmask.conf. So once we've installed DNSMask, we need to edit the configuration file. So again, we'll look at this one in just a minute, and I'll show you what I added. It was just a couple of lines into the conf itself. Save that and exit that, and then you're just going to restart the DNSMask service. So we do sudo systemctl restart DNSMask service. And then as we continue down, we're going to edit the host file just to make it easier to find the other Pi. So we just go into etc hosts and add the name of the other Pi that we want it to be, and then the IP address that it's going to be set to. And then you do need to make sure that each Pi has been set up with the proper static IP address. Don't have these set with DHCP addresses, because they'll change over time, and then again your setup won't work because it won't be able to reach the other Pi in theory. So it's better to set with static addresses if you can. I'm going to continue down a little bit more here. So the next step, once you set up the host file, is basically set up your 2 Chromium pages. So I showed you that on the VNC screen, and I've got basically I went to each page in the browser, and then I created a shortcut to that page from the desktop, or to the desktop, so that when you open it, it just opens up in a bigger window. So I just go in there and I create this folder called, and it's in a folder called .config that should already be there, but it's just called auto start. It's just a folder. and I'll show you what I put in there as well. And then the last thing is to install an on-screen keyboard. So we do sudo apt install onboard is the on-screen keyboard I used, and then I just put a -y so it doesn't prompt me like, do you want to install this? And then finally we need to install something to help support that keyboard on the Raspberry Pi 2. So we do sudo apt install at-spi2-core, and that just helps with the accessibility and stuff like that the keyboard can use to do some extra things. And once I finished all of that, I was, other than just like some configuration and setting some things up and getting things laid out the way I wanted, I was really finished. So it's not too many steps to get all of this set up and done, other than the actual connecting of physical boards and things like that. Really not bad. There's a bunch of information here, but I'm going to go back through some of these so you can kind of see exactly what we were doing on those. And I'll show you what Raspi config looks like. It's on a little bit smaller terminal here with larger text, so it's going to probably look a little bit weird. But you just do sudo raspi-config. Oops, didn't spell it right. So once you get to this Raspi config, you'll see system options, display options, interface options is the one that we're interested in this case. So we're just going to go to number 3. We'll just tab over and hit select. And then right here you'll see VNC, and it says enable or disable. So basically, again, you can just hit select. And it says, would you like to do something with VNC server? And it says in this case, would you like to enable it? It's already enabled, so I'm just gonna escape out of this if I can. Yeah, escape, and I'm gonna hit OK. But it's done. You would hit yes, and then let it do its thing, and then it's gonna say, hey, I have to reboot once it's done, I think. So be ready for that. And then when you're done, you can just get out of Raspi config, and you're finished with that step, which is great. So on the next step, we need to install DNSMask. So if you remember, we do sudo apt-get install DNSMask after we do an update, and then we're going to just do a sudo nano/etc/dnsmask.conf. And I'll scroll down and show you exactly what I edited here. It's not much, but it's down here a little ways. We're going to come down to this section that says add domains which you want to force to an IP address right here. And the example below, so send any host and double click. So right here you can kind of see an example of what they want, but in my case I put address. I just created a new line and then I put equals and then slash ospi1.loc. So I just called it ospi1, and I gave it this address 10.100.21.2. and then instead of having the .loc on it, I just wanted it to be known as ospi1, and I did the same exact address, and I just did a new line for that. No biggie on that one. So that should be everything you have to change on there. There's a whole lot of stuff in here that you can set up and change if you want to go through and read the documentation on how to do it. Really, that was all that I did. It was nothing difficult or anything like that, so I really just kind of went through and set it up. That's it. I mean, there's tons and tons and tons of stuff in here, but you can see it's all commented out with a little pound sign, hashtag, number sign, whatever you want to call it in front of it. So I'm just going to go Control X to exit that. I'm not going to make any changes, but that's all I did. I added those two lines. So again, I'll have that in the show notes for you. After I did the DNSMask.conf, I restarted that service. And then we did a sudo nano etc hosts. So let's just do sudo. So we'll do a sudo nano. We'll do a sudo nano/etc/hosts. And right down here you can see again, I've just called out that this is the IP address of ospi1.loc. So ospi1. So I just gave it two names, and then I told it here's where that IP address should be. Now again, you need to make sure on each Pi that you've set them to have these IP addresses as their static address. And I set this on the ETH0 interface in this case because I'm using the Ethernet cable to connect the two. So when that's done, you just get out of that, and then the next thing, once I had that running, so I could ping that way. So I wanted to say like, okay, can I ping 10.100.21.2? Is that what it was? Yeah. So there we go. I'm pinging it. I can do ping ospi1, same thing, and I can just do ping ospi1.loc, and still it's able to find it because I've set up those items like I just showed you. So I've got communication running. That's a great start, and that's what we want. And then the next thing to do is test it with VNC, of course, which we've seen already works. So once we've done that, I wanted an on-screen keyboard and the auto start stuff. So let's just go to cd.config/auto start. And I'm just going to clear this out actually. So when I do an ls, you'll see there's a few things here. And I've got this desktop right here, and I've got this item that's a desktop item right there. So I just took the desktop options and copied them into the auto start folder. That's how I want those to start. So I need to put the same thing for the keyboard in here, so the onboard keyboard, so it will also start up right when the system starts. But this is how you can get this to auto start. And then the next thing was installing the keyboard and the last little bit there so that we'd have everything running. So that was it. I mean, you're talking about once you've connected the hardware and getting everything set up, that's probably the longest part. Setting all of this up, other than just waiting for updates and installs to happen. When you know what you're doing, and I'm going to give you the instructions so you'll know what you're doing, probably would take you 10-15 minutes tops. It's just not that much to get done. It's really super straightforward, and again, it turns out to be a really great sprinkler controller that I'm having a lot of fun with. So since it's a touch screen, instead of making them double tap to click, I went and changed the settings inside of the system so that a single click will actually open anything you touch. It's kind of annoying when you have a mouse because you're used to double clicking, but if I just click one time, it will open up that application, and that makes it so they can just touch one time and it opens up the application. And then if I want the other one, I can minimize this out of the way for just a second, and I can click on it and it will open it up. And there we go. Now we've got both systems back up and running, and of course I can access those things from here at the top pretty easily with a single touch, and I can do all the things that I need to do. You know, when you think of this, you might be saying, well, I'm not going to be selling my home. Why would I go to all this trouble? But just think, if you have loved ones who are in your home with you and something tragic should ever happen to you, how would they continue to operate your home? When you're going out there and setting up open source software and open source servers and open source automation like Home Assistant, things like that, how does your family continue to use the things that you've set up? Are you documenting that? Are you making it easy for them to keep it running and keep it going? It's very important that you do those things and that you consider those things. It's really just such an important thing for you to say, hey, I wanted to make sure that you could do this and that you can do this anytime you need to. If something should happen to me where I can't deal with it or handle it at the time, maybe you're just tied up, maybe you're out of the country, maybe you're on a trip, somebody else needs to do something and it's not easy, then it's hard for you sometimes to explain to them over the phone how to do it if you can't remotely connect to it. There could be all kinds of situations where that comes up. So for me, this situation came up because somebody's buying my house, but it really kind of made me say, hey, what if it was just my family and they needed to do this and they wanted to use the sprinkler system and I hadn't shown them how to do that on their devices and they weren't sure how to do that? This makes it a very nice physical thing that they can go and do very easily and make everything run. And I'll say that, again, I've been running this OpenSprinkler Pi system for like 6 years since I bought this house, and it has been rock solid. I mean, I have had almost zero issues with it. I would say the biggest issues I had was actually more with the network Wi-Fi. It's better to plug them into a network cable if you can, but where I had them in the garage, they had to be on Wi-Fi, and I had some Wi-Fi that wasn't so stable at one point, and that gave me some trouble. But other than that, when I've had solid Wi-Fi, these things have just been solid. I mean, super easy to use, and it's great because, again, I can actually connect to them through Wi-Fi from my phone or my tablet, and I can go out in the yard and actually check and see what's going on. And when I have a sprinkler I'm trying to fix, I can turn it on and off from that point. I don't have to walk all the way back in here, turn it on, turn it back off, walk all the way back out there to work on it. It's a really convenient thing to have this kind of setup, actually. But for the new owners, I just wanted them to have a way to run their sprinklers and do things pretty easily. Again, I'll be leaving instructions for them on how to connect to it and connect it to their Wi-Fi and things like that. But I wanted to make this as easy as possible for them out of the gate, and this is kind of the way that I did it. So last thing I want to talk about is the keyboards. Again, this is the one called Onboard. It's really a great keyboard. I like it. It's got a ton of configuration. So you can close it here. You can grab this to move it here, so you can kind of set it where you want it, and it generally opens back up wherever you've put it. So if I put it here at the bottom of the screen, that's pretty much where it's going to open each time. And if you're leaving a little bit of space on the edges, you can kind of put it in the middle. You can stretch it and make it different sizes as well. You've got all of your different keys here to switch out if you just want like numbers. You can get your function keys this way and your number pad this way, kind of your arrow keys, which is kind of awesome. You've got your ABC for your capitals, things like that. You've got shift, you've got this little mouse pointer, which will let you actually do some things as well. So pretty great. But then down here, you've got this area for quick tools, which is pretty awesome. So because they may not know how to update the system and the commands to update the system, now you saw it pops up on the screen so they can update it graphically, but if they wanted to, they can just click on this and you see it fills in the entire command for updating the system, and then they can just hit the enter key and it's going to go out and it's going to try to run the updates, and it'll get everything updated for them to the latest versions, which is pretty great actually. And it may prompt them for a yes, but I put a -y, so it won't even prompt them. It'll just run the updates for them, and everything should be good. Now, they could do something to do the remove. It says that I could auto-remove an older keyboard that I put on it called Matchbox. But to install these keyboards was really easy. It was sudo apt install and then onboard. This is the keyboard that I'm using right here, right now. I really like this keyboard. It's very nice. The Matchbox keyboard is nice because it's full screen, but it did not have the number row. I couldn't figure out if there was any settings. I couldn't figure out how to get to the numbers. It was a very basic, very simplistic, very minimal keyboard. So if you don't need all of that, I think it's a really cool keyboard because it automatically goes full screen. You can move it really easily. But definitely if you need some of the extra settings and stuff, this is easier. So I really, really like this setup right here. This is freaking amazing. But you've also got your settings. So you should be able to click on that and then you get your settings up. So we kind of looked at these earlier, but yeah, you normally would. Now this is all available through that touch screen, so I'll have all the hardware that I've used in the show notes and description for you guys. They are not affiliate links. I will not make any money off of them. If you wanted to buy this stuff, you're just buying it off of Amazon. I don't have access to AliExpress being in the US, but I'm sure you could find the same thing on AliExpress or wherever you prefer to shop online. I've been pretty happy with this little touchscreen. It's pretty nice, and it wasn't super expensive given that it's a 10.1 inch touchscreen that's fairly easy to connect up to a Raspberry Pi. I'm sure a Raspberry Pi 4 would even be better. And I also think we created a wood casing to mount on the wall, but I'm sure if you have a 3D printer, you could create a nice 3D printed way to mount it on the wall. The one thing I like about it is that I can slide it out really easily through the top because we slotted it so that the edges of the screen slide down in and sits nicely. But we can slide it out and you can work on the hardware if you need to and make connections and things like that. So yeah, this is OpenSprinkler Pi and the way that I've built out the hardware using open source software and using open source tools that are just absolutely incredible. So there's quite a few in this video. I know there was a lot to go over. I do want to show you guys what this does whenever you kind of just turn it on for the sprinklers. So I'm going to get my phone and we'll go and kind of turn it on, and I'll kind of look out the window to one side here. It's really windy here today, so I don't want to run the sprinklers for too long, but I do want to let you see kind of what it looks like. So we'll go start those up. All right, I'm going to zoom in here, but you can see out my window, this is really my zone 2 and 7 that are kind of out here. But really, I'm going to do zone 2. I think it'll be the easiest one just to kind of see that the water is actually flowing. So we're going to go here to the screen, and you can see zone 2 right there. So I'm just going to tap it. And I'll run that for about a minute. I can actually stop it anytime I want to. And then we're going to hit submit. And if that works, it should start my sprinklers. All right, here they go. You can see the sidewalk starting to get wet. You can maybe see the water through the camera a little bit there. But there are my sprinklers running. You can see, like I said, it's kind of windy, so it's hard to tell very well through the window, but it is definitely running. You can probably see the water getting blown around by the wind out there pretty well. So I'm just going to come back over, and I will just tap this again and try not to waste water here and tell it to stop. And they should turn off pretty shortly. There we go. So really, a really easy way to set up your sprinklers and get things running, and really, hopefully this is going to be great for whoever the new owners are for the house. But yeah, I really have liked what we've done here. I think it's a great setup, and it makes it really easy to run things. I really hope you enjoyed this. If you did, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along in this open source journey with us, and I'll talk to you next time. It's your open source advocate, and I'm back, and I've set up a store with a little bit of merchandise. I love being your open source advocate, but I want you guys to be the open source advocates with me. So if you want to, get out there and get some of this stuff. And if you do, let me know what you think of it. Thank you for subscribing.